Hi, everyone. I'm Stacey Adelman, and I'm a registered psychologist and owner at Joshua Tree Learning Center in Regina, Saskatchewan. So I come to you live every Tuesday at 12, although a lot of times it's a little bit after 12 by the time I get everything set up and I can jump online. But welcome to this week's edition of Tuesdays at 12. And what I wanted to talk about today was a little bit more about ADHD and how parents and educators can help children and teens with ADHD. Most specifically, I really wanted to talk about what I call the argument vortex. So I hear so many parents and teachers talking with me about how frustrating or difficult it can be when they're working with an individual or a child with ADHD who is really argumentative, can feel very defiant, but they like to argue, argue, argue. And it can be very frustrating. It could be damaging to the relationship and the connection, and just are kind of at their wits' end or really struggling with how to cope or how to deal with these kinds of situations. So, first of all, if you're a parent or an educator working with children or teens with ADHD and you've had this happen to you, you are not alone. This is a very common issue and one that I hear very often in with the individuals that I work with on a day-to-day basis. And so, what I wanted to start out by saying was individuals with ADHD, some of them, not all of them. So, I want to be clear on that. Not all individuals with ADHD are very argumentative, but it certainly is a trait that you may see and experience. And what happens is sometimes the brain, when an individual with ADHD, they're looking the brain is needing to be stimulated. It needs to be in a learning state, and there's lots of ways that the brain can do that. And so exercise, for example, is one way that the brain is stimulated, becomes in a learning state so the individual can learn. It just feels right. It feels good. Another way that it likes to be stimulated can be through arguing or debating, right? So it's the stimulating kind of a behavior that the individual is engaging in. And so what that means is that we have to be really careful that we're not kind of falling and gravitating to that vortex and engaging in that argumentative behavior with them, right? So it can be very tempting to want to try to logic and reason with an individual who is engaged in that argumentative type of behavior. So maybe the individual is really upset because they have to get off of the video games to do this, and this. An argument ensues, and it can be easy to fall into justifying why it's time to get off of the computer. It's time to get off of the video game because you had this much time yesterday, and so on and so forth. And it's just not good, for your health and yada, 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 right? We tend to go on these long-winded kinds of explanations where we're trying to reason with the individual. Honestly, that's just not going to work. Number one, an individual with ADHD needs things to be clear, concise, to the point. Okay. So we need structure, consistency, routine, and we need to be extremely clear, brief, to the point. So I hear this from individuals with ADHD all the time. Quit talking so much. Why? They're inattentive, they're tuning it out, and they're not reasoning with you. Another reason is because individuals with ADHD can sometimes really have a difficulty with perspective taking. So when you're trying to explain your perspective or reason your perspective with that child or that teen, they have trouble with perspective taking, so they're not necessarily taking your perspective. They're not seeing it, right? They just know this is what I want and this is what I want to have happen, and I'm disappointed about that. So what do we do instead? Well, I think a lot of times less is more, especially when it comes to communicating clearly. Less is more. We want to be brief, clear, to the point. So you can explain one time what the rationale is for getting off of the video games, for example. It's time to get off of the video games. This is what has to be done. This is your official 10-minute warning, right? Well, that's not fair because so-and-so had it this long yesterday. It's time to get off of the video games. This is your 10-minute warning. And this is what's going to happen, right? And you just keep it clear and to the point. Your voice needs to be firm and clear. You don't need to be yelling, but you can be firm and clear. This is the expectation. This is what is going to happen. And then you can engage in it. Don't engage in it, rather, anymore. You might explain to them and say, look, I'm not ignoring you. I've heard what you said, and I know it's hard for you to get off. But the expectation is you have to get off. And sometimes that's hard, and that's going to make us feel uncomfortable. That's just the way it is, though. It's not changing. So just keep it clear. They're going to carry on. They're going to try to pull you in. They're going to try to pull it. Why? Because it's a stimulating, engaging kind of a behavior, right? Don't go into the vortex. Keep it clear. You don't need to respond anymore. So just to recap, you might even just say, I will not be answering anymore. This is what needs to happen. And then you just let it be. They know that you aren't responding anymore. They know this is not open for any more conversation. This is not open for debate because you're simply not going to engage in it. Okay, so to be very, very clear, let's just recap. Don't fall into the ADHD argument vortex. Clear, direct, to the point. Explain yourself one time. Explain that you will not be answering anymore, that you're not ignoring them, but you will not answer this question or any of the questions about it again. We want to avoid any long-winded conversations about it and let it be. All right, so just a short and sweet Facebook Live today. If you have any other questions, please send them our way, and we are more than happy to talk about them live on Tuesdays at 12. I believe next week we will have Cassie Brown joining us. So stay tuned. We've got more great topics coming your way. Tuesdays at 12. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.